Hi everyone, I'm Siobhan Curren. Thanks for having me here today at the Hunter Innovation Festival. I was lucky enough to be able to attend the last 2 days, and it's been really fascinating to hear all of the innovation that's happening in the Hunter region. Usually we look to capital cities for the way forward and overseas, and we've got enough happening here already that they can fill, nearly 2-3 days worth of forum, so that's really exciting. Anyway, I'm here to talk about blogs and co-authoring, and my personal experiences with blogging is very patchy in terms of the number of blogs that I've authored. I've had about 2 or 3. The most recent is the Newcastle files, which I started when I first moved to Newcastle 4 years ago. And I'm probably a really good example of what not to do when it comes to blogging. But I'm a passionate consumer of blogs. I have a blog feed that it gets beyond ridiculous if I don't keep up to date with it. But it's just my total downtime. I don't actually watch television anymore. I just am on the internet all the time, reading short form and long form posts. Anyway, I just wanted to kind of segue from Stuart's talk into what I'm going to be talking about, and I didn't even know there was a term for this, but the bricolage is very much what I rely on when I author content for blogs. I'm relying on what's around me to produce content. But a little bit about, and then this is one of the blogs that probably one of the first blogs I ever discovered was Swiss Miss, who's a New York-based graphic designer. She's originally from Switzerland, and she blogs very frequently, and she's very influential. I hate to think how many hundreds of thousands of people read her blog every day. But strangely enough, this week, she posted this excerpt from another blog post, which is explaining what innovation is, which, as mentioned before, it's a word that gets bandied around a lot, and it's really difficult for some people to really understand what that means, and we were talking about that before in the previous presentation about creativity has the same kind of malady as well. But innovation is something that's new and uniquely useful, and I really like that kind of explanation for it, and how it differentiates itself from other creations. Anyway, so that's the Novocastrian files there. So blogging, if you're not familiar with it as a concept, I guess began in the late 1990s. It's short for weblog, and blog was actually the word of the year in Merriam-Webster's website in 2004. That's when it kind of really reached peak interest. People were like, it's a horrible sounding word, what does it mean and why are people using it? And basically it's just a form of online diary, I guess, where the most frequently published post appears at the top and all the ones underneath it, subsequent, fall underneath it. And it's just diarised by a calendar diarisation. There's thousands and thousands and thousands of blogs. Some are often just personal diaries. Usually they have some kind of niche that they fill. And often some of those really well-famous blogs that we know now and read every day, like the Huffington Post, which is started as a news blog, is now a multi-million-dollar news media channel. You have design blogs like Design Sponge, which have lots and lots of offshoots from their blog, so they make their revenue from advertising on the blog, but also produce books and seminars and workshops and all sorts of other things. Locally, Lost at E Minor sort of began in a blog format, so they actually shared space with Stuart at the clinic as part of a Renew Newcastle project, but now they're a fully commercial rent-paying tenant in town and count Network 10 as one of their shareholders. So they produce Lost at E Minor and the sports website The Raw. You've got gossip blogs like TMZ and Perez Hilton. Food blogs started. There was one that I used to follow like a decade ago, and that was 101 Cookbooks, which is a lady who had thousands of cookbooks, was never cooking from them, and decided to cook from a recipe from each one of her cookbooks every day and blog about it. But she was a photographer, so her imagery was beautiful. Fashion, most people would have heard of The Sartorialist from New York, Scott Schulman's blog. Health, I guess locally, you'd probably count someone like Sarah Wilson's blog, I Quit Sugar, which just has this massive, ridiculous cult following of people who are following her diet of not eating any sugar. Tech web blogs like Mashable and TechCrunch. All these blogs now like commercial, viable, new media forms. But the kinds of blogs that I like to reference are those really niche, small blogs. I guess in terms of blogs, importance in today's culture is that, along with the printing press and post-industrial revolution with the internet, the democratisation of knowledge is just the most it's ever been, and it's just constantly evolving every day. And blogs, I find, have a real value in being able to tell stories that would otherwise have never been told and make people editors of their own knowledge and world. And it's, I guess the power in the internet is that people who have access to the internet are the ones now editing and becoming their own editors. But in fact, they're also providing a voice to people who don't have the access to the internet and aren't able to be sourced by traditional new media models like newspapers and television news sites. So that's really exciting anyway. But from a blogging point of view, there are different kinds of blogs. Some of them just like on Tumblr where they just repost other people's blog posts. And that's a really beautiful way of being able to curate a channel that reflects your values. And I think that's great. And I've had blogs like that myself in the past. But blogging can also be about creation and connection. And when I started doing the Novocastrian files, I realised there was real value in actually being able to create original content for the web. And there wasn't a lot about what was happening in Newcastle locally, particularly when it came to creatives, of which there's a huge abundance. So I started profiling creative Novocastrians who would fill, and in terms of co-authoring, I would provide them the questions, they would type the answers out and give them back to me. So there wasn't a real lot of work on my part, apart from drafting the post, adding in the photos and hitting publish. And blogging really helps with the tyranny of distance. A lot of my traffic from the Novocastrian files, 60% of it comes from overseas. The engagement with the audience is measurable. There's Google Analytics, you can see where people are coming from, how frequently they're visiting, and what social media channels they're visiting from, or whether they're coming from just Google. And it also provides a fan culture as well. And that's just so valuable. That fan culture, they're your advertising. They're the word of mouth that tells everyone else what's going on your blog, on your website. And it also provides the creator with inspiration as well, because they're getting immediate feedback on what posts work and what posts don't. But I find the most valuable thing you can do on a blog is original content. And that is really high quality. And with, technology the way it is at the moment with digital photography and film, it's getting easier and easier for people to just be able to dip their toes into a creative process, share it, get feedback, and learn and grow and create and share and more. So I'm just going to go through some, from a local point of view, and the things that interest me is all about Newcastle, some local blogs. So some of them you may know, some of them I'm hoping will be a pleasant surprise to you. That's my blog read. So that was me after not reading my blog feed. So I go to feedly.com is the feeder I use, and you can subscribe to blog posts. You don't have to remember to visit websites every day. They just aggregate all the content in one space. So that was 41 unread posts in 4 hours. So you can imagine how much blogs I read. This is a new-ish blog called All the Streets in Newcastle. It's under the premise that it's a 90-year-old woman who walks the street of Newcastle, writes a story about it, sends it to her friend in Sydney who's tech-savvy, who types it up for her and adds her photos that she takes on her iPhone. And I'm like, really hoping that's true, but part of me suspects that it might be a creative writing project, but I'm going to just stick with what's on the About page. Another one is these tumblers. So a lot of photographers are using these to share their creative work. So this is Ben Howland, who's a local photographer. Another one, Brett McDonald. This is by, whose name I don't remember, but they work at the Newcastle Art Gallery, but they've always got really interesting posts about local art events. So the Nova Castria exhibition at the Newcastle Art Gallery that's just open, I went and saw it the other day. Go and see it, it's fantastic. Coal River Working Party's blog, so that's actually edited by Johnny over there, and it's just a fascinating, if you're into like long form reads about certain points of time in historical Newcastle, it just can't be beat, it's amazing. Dylan Smith, who's a graphic designer, he's also a Newcastle participant, but he's actually produced a zine out of these illustrations that he's put up on his blog, which are architectural renderings of buildings in Newcastle, and I just think they're beautiful. Found, I have no idea who edits this blog, but they just find these amazing, take these amazing photos of just random urban life in Newcastle. Hamilton North blog, most people will know this one. It's by Mark McLean, who used to own McLean Bookshop in Beaumont Street. He did this as a writing exercise, so at least once a week he walks the canals of Hamilton North with his dog, and he writes about those experiences. And it sounds really boring, canals in Newcastle, but it's fascinating, and it's actually been published into a book. His voice is beautiful. Hidden Hamilton, so this is by a historian living in Hamilton who is just taking it upon herself in her spare time to write long-form reads on particular points of interest within Hamilton. So this post behind me is about the Kent Hotel, and it's really interesting. Just like knowledge that would otherwise just be lost is now being documented online forever. It's great. iCycle Newcastle, this one hasn't been posted to in a while, which I'm really bummed about, but it's just people on their bikes in Newcastle. So they're a pro-biking advocate, and it's kind of like the sartorialist, but Newcastle style. This blog is fantastic. This is one of the first Newcastle blogs I ever came across, Little Eco Footprints. It's authored by Tricia Hogben, who actually used to live in Newcastle. She now lives up a little bit in the valley, but she writes a weekly column now for the Newcastle Herald on a Saturday in the H2 section, and she's trying to live a sustainable life, leaving the smallest footprint possible. And this is probably the best example of someone producing original, fresh content, new angle, niche, huge following outside of Newcastle. She's just got a real gift. She's a great photographer. She's a great author. She's really knowledgeable, and her passion is contagious. This is another illustrated website. So these are scenes from Newcastle. Unfortunately, I can't remember the name of the person who authors this one, but this is a nice little Tumblr as well. Newcastle Now and Then, this is another Tumblr. So the Tumblr is just a blogging platform where you're able to share images with other Tumblrs really easily. So this is a combination of content that's been shared from other Tumblrs and original photos as well. It's just a nice reminder to be known of what's going on in Newcastle. This is another photography website, Nova Castria. Pink Paint and Mary Jane's, it's not specifically about Newcastle all of the time, but she's probably one of the more prolific bloggers in Newcastle. Linda Drummond is the author. She started the SPC Sunday campaign on Twitter, which went on to save SPC. So she's a pretty amazing, very savvy social media and blogging personality in Newcastle. Showbag is the website of Michael Newton, who's a creative director, but he has a point-and-shoot camera, and he just goes around Newcastle shooting one image a day. That's his daily habit, and that's been going on now for 2 years. He's shot an image and posted it to his blog once a day, and they're all Newcastle scenes pretty much. Swamp Life is another one. That's actually the wife of Mark McLean from the Hamilton North blog. The View from King Street is probably one of the most popular Newcastle Tumblrs. It's actually by a guy, Wayne Mullen, who lives in Sydney, but he has a house at the Moorings on King Street next to the Tower Cinemas. So he comes up frequently to Newcastle for weekends and things like that. And he's just a passionate advocate for how awesome Newcastle is, and he's always posting about all the happenings in Newcastle. This Untidy Smoky City is an article-based website by Matt Endicott, who is a very passionate Novocastrian, sixth generation Novocastrian, writes about the issues going on in town. West End Adventures is one that focuses primarily on the West End. And this is the one I work on for the University of Newcastle, which is Engage Newcastle, and its remit is to promote university community engagement stories, but also for us to be able to provide a platform for those kinds of community events that don't get a lot of press and media. We provide a channel for those organisations. But anyway, I've probably taken far too long. That's me. And if you've got any questions about blogging or anything like that, I'm happy to chat to you afterwards. Thank you.